You were told school was where truth lived, where facts were sacred and learning was pure. But what if the classroom was the first place you were systematically lied to? From learning styles to the food pyramid, we're peeling back 40 polished lies that shaped generations and built the illusion of education itself. 1. Every morning, you stood, hand over heart, and pledged allegiance to a flag. You were told it was a timeless, sacred ritual of patriotism. What they didn't tell you is that the pledge was invented in 1892 as a brilliant marketing campaign. A magazine called The Youth's Companion was trying to sell American flags to schools, so they hired a socialist minister to write a catchy jingle to go with their product. It was the 19th century equivalent of a "Got Milk?" ad, but for nationalism. And the phrase "under God." That was added in 1954 during the Cold War to differentiate the US from the godless communists. So that solemn oath wasn't born from patriotism. It was born from capitalism. 2. You've probably been told you're a visual learner, or maybe an auditory one, as if your brain has a specific input jack for information. This entire concept of learning styles is one of the most persistent and profitable pieces of pseudoscience in modern education. It feels great to have a label that explains why you hate lectures, but study after study has shown there is zero evidence that teaching to a specific style improves learning. In fact, it does the opposite by limiting you. The idea survives because it sells millions in consulting fees and teacher training programs. It's the educational equivalent of a horoscope, a fun but meaningless category that has no bearing on your actual potential. Your brain isn't a one-trick pony. It learns best when you see, hear, and do. 3. Remember that terrifying, all-powerful, permanent record teachers would threaten you with? The one where scribbling on your desk in 4th grade would get you blacklisted from every job in college for the rest of your life? It's a ghost story, a piece of administrative fiction designed to scare children into compliance. In reality, your record is just a collection of transcripts and major disciplinary actions that almost no one will ever see. Colleges care about your grades, not the time you got detention for throwing a grape. Employers couldn't care less. It was the ultimate psychological weapon for an overworked teacher. 4. You've probably heard the story that homework was invented in 1905 by a grumpy Italian teacher named Roberto Novellis as punishment for lazy kids. Total myth. Homework crept into schools long before that, imported from 19th century Prussia's education model, which valued obedience and repetition over curiosity. The real origin isn't one man's bad mood. It's a system built to keep kids practicing conformity even at home. You weren't being educated after class. You were just doing unpaid overtime for the state. 5. Let's talk about America's favorite educational ritual: judging a teenager's entire intellectual worth by their ability to answer multiple-choice questions under extreme pressure. The lie is that standardized tests like the SAT or ACT are objective measures of intelligence or college readiness. What they truly excel at, however, is measuring the size of your parents' bank account. Scores consistently correlate with family income, which dictates access to expensive prep courses, tutors, and better-resourced schools. They are terrible predictors of creativity, critical thinking, or even success in college. They don't measure your potential. They measure your privilege and your ability to memorize test-taking strategies. It's not an intelligence test. It's a wealth test you have to pay to take. 6. You were told grades are objective, a pure reflection of intelligence and effort. In reality, grading is one of the most subjective systems in modern life. Studies show that two teachers can give the same essay entirely different scores depending on mood, handwriting, or whether they've had lunch. A B from one classroom might be a D in another zip code. The letter on your report card says less about your brain and more about who was holding the red pen that day. Objective assessment is a comforting illusion in a system built on human bias and caffeine. 7. We were taught that school dress codes exist to promote focus and prevent distraction. The truth: They were designed to enforce control and conformity. The real distraction isn't a kid's ripped jeans, it's the adult obsession with policing self-expression. Dress codes often punish girls more harshly, label cultural hairstyles as unprofessional, and turn fashion into a moral issue. It's not about learning, it's about authority pretending to protect you while quietly teaching obedience through fabric. 8. Everyone knows what the dunce cap means. You're the class idiot. But what if I told you it was originally invented as a brain-boosting smart hat? Seriously, the cap was championed by 13th century philosopher John Duns Scotus, who believed its pointy shape would act like an antenna, funneling divine knowledge from God into the wearer's head. His followers wore them with pride. It was only centuries later that his critics flipped the script, turning his name into the word dunce and his magic wisdom cone into the ultimate symbol of stupidity. So the original dunce wasn't an idiot. He was a guy wearing a tinfoil hat, but for God. 9. The war on chewing gum in school was never about distraction or choking hazards. It was janitors versus minty fossils. Administrators got tired of scraping cemented Wrigley's off desks, so they banned gum for everyone. It became a moral crusade built on laziness. The real irony? Studies suggest chewing can slightly improve focus and memory. Nothing dramatic, but still. You were punished for something that might have helped you pay attention better. The rule was never about safety. It was about not grossing out the custodians. 10. You probably heard that good handwriting means you're a smart, disciplined student. Schools spent decades tying penmanship to character, as if messy notes reveal a messy soul. But studies now show no link between handwriting neatness and intelligence. Einstein had awful penmanship. The myth survived because it gave teachers a quick, visible way to judge effort. In truth, your handwriting says nothing about your IQ, only how much time you were willing to waste perfecting curls instead of ideas. 11. You can't start a sentence with because. How many times did an English teacher bleed all over your paper with a red pen for that imaginary crime? This rule is a myth, a piece of pedagogical folklore passed down through generations of overly pedantic instructors. It likely started as a way to stop kids from writing lazy, fragmented answers like, "Why were you late?" "Because I missed the bus." But as a grammatical law, it has zero basis in reality. Every major style guide, from Chicago to AP, confirms that it is perfectly acceptable. It's a teacher's personal preference that they laundered into an unbreakable law, terrorizing students and stifling writing styles for decades. Because they could. 12. The story of the first Thanksgiving, where pilgrims and Native Americans sat down for a harmonious feast, is one of America's founding myths. It's also a heavily sanitized piece of propaganda. The reality is that this 1621 event wasn't some grand peace summit. It was likely a routine English harvest festival that local Wampanoag people attended out of diplomatic necessity and perhaps curiosity. The rosy image of friendship conveniently ignores the brutal context. Waves of disease brought by Europeans had already decimated the native population, and the fragile peace would soon collapse into decades of violent conflict. What we're taught isn't history. It's a Hallmark card version of a complicated, bloody story designed to make everyone feel good. 13. That colorful food pyramid hanging in every cafeteria looked like science, but was really politics in pastel form. It wasn't designed by nutritionists to help kids eat better. It was engineered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to keep the grain and meat industries happy. That's why it told millions of kids to eat 6 to 11 servings of bread and cereal a day. Real experts protested, but they were buried under lobby money. The pyramid didn't cause an obesity epidemic, but it sure blurred the line between dinner and dessert. It wasn't nutrition. It was marketing in triangle form. 14. That agonizing experience of learning cursive, spending hours perfecting loops and swirls, was sold as an essential skill for intelligent and sophisticated people. The truth is that cursive was a technological hack for a bygone era. Its entire purpose was to allow people to write faster with quill pens, which would splatter ink if you lifted them off the page too often. That's it. It's a solution to a problem we haven't had in over a century. Insisting that kids learn it today is like teaching them how to operate a telegraph machine for better communication skills. It's pure, pointless nostalgia disguised as educational rigor, kept alive by people who think difficulty equals value. 15. Parent-teacher conferences are presented as a collaborative summit for your child's success. In reality, they are a 15-minute masterclass in coded language and barely concealed hostility. The teacher, exhausted and underpaid, will say things like, "Johnny is a very energetic leader in the classroom," which actually means, "Your child is the ringleader of a chaotic circus, and I'm one spitball away from quitting." In return, the parent will nod sagely and say, "He just has so much passion for learning," which translates to, "Don't you dare blame my perfect angel." It's not a meeting. It's a diplomatic standoff where both sides smile while silently begging for the bell to ring. 16. The dogmatic insistence on showing your work in math class is framed as a sacred principle. While understanding the process is important, the rule is often a crutch for standardized grading. It systematically punishes students who think intuitively or can solve problems mentally, forcing their non-linear brains into a rigid format for the convenience of the person with the red pen. It rewards meticulous documentation over efficient problem-solving. It sends a clear message. The correct answer is secondary to following the approved procedure. This doesn't create mathematicians, it creates bureaucrats. 17. Let's talk about the quintessential grammar rule drilled into our heads. I before E, except after C. It's presented as an ironclad law of the English language. It's also one of the biggest scams in spelling. This rule has so many exceptions that it's practically useless. Weird, foreign, feisty, they're science, sees, height, slay, neighbor. The list of words that defy this nonsense is massive. In fact, a study found there are significantly more common words that break the rule than follow it. So why is it still taught? Because it's easy. It gives the illusion of order in a chaotic language, and it's a simple thing for a teacher to correct in your writing, making them feel useful. 18. School bake sales are portrayed as a heartwarming example of community spirit, with kids and parents coming together to raise money for a good cause. Let's call it what it really is: a national humiliation. We live in one of the wealthiest countries on earth, yet we force our children to hawk 50-cent cupcakes in a drafty gymnasium to fund basic necessities like library books, art supplies, or even functioning science equipment. It's not cute. It's a pathetic, sugary band-aid on the gaping wound of chronic underfunding in public education. It teaches kids a terrible lesson, that their education is only worth whatever they can raise by selling brownies. 19. Every biology student remembers the smell of formaldehyde and the educational experience of dissecting a frog. It's been sold as a rite of scientific passage, a crucial, hands-on way to learn anatomy. But the truth? Most students remember the smell, not the science. Today, virtual dissection tools can teach anatomy in 3D, let you repeat experiments endlessly, and spare a few frogs in the process. The frog lab wasn't sacred science. It was just a tradition too gross to question. 20. Remember the presidential physical fitness test? Specifically, that dreaded wooden box of the sit and reach? We were told this was a scientific, standardized measure of our health and flexibility. The truth is, it's a nearly useless indicator of overall fitness. The test primarily measures the flexibility of your hamstrings and lower back, and is heavily influenced by your limb-to-torso ratio. Having long arms is a bigger advantage than being genuinely fit. It's a classic example of schools using arbitrary, pseudoscientific metrics to quantify and rank students, creating anxiety over a number that has almost no bearing on your actual long-term health. It doesn't measure fitness. It measures your specific body geometry. 21. We were told group projects prepare us for real-world collaboration. This is a particularly cynical lie. In reality, a school group project rarely teaches teamwork. Instead, It teaches one responsible student how to perform the work of 4 people while managing the social dynamics of 3 slackers. It's a powerful lesson, not in collaboration but in resentment. It doesn't simulate a professional team, where there are consequences for incompetence. It simulates the specific nightmare of being shackled to coworkers you can't fire, whose failures directly impact your success. The only skill it truly hones is the ability to mask your simmering rage with a polite smile. 22. The ringing bells, 50-minute periods, and constant subject hopping are sold as the perfect structure for learning. But this design wasn't built for brains. It was built for factories. In the Industrial Revolution, schools borrowed factory logic, timed shifts, rigid schedules, and constant supervision. The result? A system that rewards punctuality over deep thought and multitasking over mastery. You weren't being trained to think freely. You were being tuned to show up, sit still, and obey the bell. 23. The school guidance counselor is often depicted as a wise mentor, a personal life coach dedicated to unlocking your potential. For the vast majority of public school students, this is pure fantasy. The truth is that these counselors are some of the most overburdened professionals in the entire system, often responsible for the academic tracks, emotional crises, and post-graduation plans of hundreds of students at a time. The 15 minutes they can spare for you isn't a deep dive into your soul. It's administrative triage. They're not failing you out of indifference. They are failing you because the system has made their job description an impossible fiction. 24. The baking soda and vinegar volcano is presented as the pinnacle of elementary school scientific achievement. It's the project that guarantees an A and parental applause. The lie is that it has anything to do with real science. In reality, it's a glorified arts and crafts project that demonstrates a single, simple chemical reaction. It teaches nothing about the scientific method. There is no hypothesis, no data collection, no analysis. It's a magic trick with a predetermined outcome. This ritual teaches kids a terrible lesson. That science isn't about inquiry, experimentation, and failure, but about following a recipe to get a cool, bubbly result. It's not an experiment. It's culinary chemistry. 25. The notion that your history textbook is an objective account of the past is perhaps the most profound lie of all. A textbook is not a record. It is a narrative. It is a carefully curated story, shaped by nationalistic priorities and cultural biases. What is included is just as important as what is omitted. You did not learn the history of the world. You learned a specific, state-approved version of it, designed to foster a particular identity. Real historical literacy begins the moment you start to question that version. 26. You were told, school prepares you for real life. Let's be honest. When was the last time anyone asked you to find the area of a trapezoid, recite the mitochondria's job, or format an MLA citation at your job? School rarely teaches taxes, rent, negotiation, or emotional intelligence. It teaches compliance, deadlines, silence, and sitting still for hours. The real life it prepares you for is an office cubicle, not the chaos of adulthood. If life were an exam, school gave you the wrong study guide. 27. The high school graduation speech is presented as the final, profound piece of wisdom bestowed upon a graduating class. The reality is that it's an exercise in cliché bingo. It is almost always delivered by a valedictorian who has precisely zero life experience, offering up recycled platitudes like, "Follow your dreams," and "Be the change you want to see." The audience of parents and teachers isn't listening for wisdom. They are enduring a ritual. The speech isn't a roadmap for the future. It's the last piece of homework a student will ever do for that school, and it is graded on its ability to be as inspirational and inoffensive as a greeting card. 28. Let's talk about the teacher's lounge, that mysterious sanctuary forbidden to students. The lie is that it's a hallowed ground for intellectual collaboration, where brilliant educators discuss pedagogy and curriculum over coffee. The truth? It is a fortress of unfiltered complaint. It is the one place where teachers can safely vent about their students' parents, the incompetent administration, and the perpetually broken copy machine. It's less of a scholarly salon and more of a group therapy session fueled by stale donuts and palpable despair. The most profound pedagogical discussions are usually about who finished the coffee and didn't start a new pot. 29. The concept of extra credit is sold as a noble opportunity for ambitious students to deepen their knowledge or for struggling ones to redeem themselves. This is a benevolent fiction. More often than not, extra credit is a form of administrative cowardice. It's a way for teachers to avoid uncomfortable conversations with parents of failing students. Instead of addressing the core issue, they can just point to the opportunity the child didn't take. The assignments themselves are often bizarre, tangential tasks, like building a diorama of a mitochondrion or writing a poem about photosynthesis, that have little to do with actual learning and everything to do with artificially inflating a grade. 30. The annual school picture day is framed as a heartwarming tradition to capture a precious moment in time. In reality, it is a high-speed, low-dignity commercial transaction disguised as a school event. You're herded into a line, given 3 seconds in front of a stranger who tells you to say cheese, and then subjected to a flash of light that guarantees you will be blinking or have a forced, unnatural smile. The result is an awkward, unflattering portrait set against a bizarre, laser-filled background from 1992, which your parents are then pressured to buy in 17 different sizes. It's not a memory, it's a product. 31. Grading on a curve sounds like a fair and scientific way to judge performance. In reality, it's academic roulette. The bell curve was meant to describe large populations, not classrooms. When teachers apply it to 30 students, they're not measuring what people learned. They're enforcing a pre-decided spread of winners and losers. Even if everyone aces the material, someone still has to fail to make the math work. It's not objectivity. It's spreadsheet theater that punishes success just to make the numbers look pretty. 32. School spirit rallies are supposed to be vibrant celebrations of community and pride, designed to unify the student body. Let's be honest about what they are: a mandatory fun event that is deeply uncomfortable for at least 80% of the attendees. It's an hour of forced enthusiasm, where a small group of extremely extroverted students and teachers scream into microphones while the rest of the school sits on hard bleachers, trying to look engaged. The deafeningly loud pop music, the awkward choreographed dances, and the desperate attempts at creating hype don't foster unity. They just make everyone acutely aware of the social chasm between the performers and the hostages. 33. The lie of the zero-tolerance policy is that it creates a safe and orderly environment by removing ambiguity from discipline. The reality is that it's a complete abdication of critical thinking. These policies force administrators to abandon common sense and context in favor of a rigid, bureaucratic flowchart. This is how you get a 6-year-old suspended for having a plastic butter knife in her lunchbox, or a high school student expelled for sharing an aspirin. It doesn't eliminate problems. It creates absurd new ones. It's an admission that the adults in charge would rather enforce a stupid rule than make a difficult judgment call. 34. Fire drills are supposed to prepare students for emergencies, but what they really teach is complacency. The calm lines, slow pacing, and casual chatter are the opposite of how people act in a real fire. Instead of urgency, kids learn that alarms mean, pack up your things and stroll outside. It's a ritual more about order than survival, an illusion of safety built on predictability. Real preparedness would start with chaos and end with instincts, not single-file boredom on the lawn. 35. The Scholastic Book Fair is marketed as a magical literary event that ignites a child's passion for reading. It is, in fact, a child's first brutal lesson in consumerism and social hierarchy. The fair transforms the humble school library into a glittering marketplace of brightly colored paperbacks, novelty erasers shaped like food, and posters of boy bands. It's less about literature and more about what your parents can afford. The kids whose parents send them with a crisp $20 bill get to experience the joy of choice, while others are left to quietly browse, knowing they can't participate. It doesn't teach a love of reading, it teaches the anxiety of desire. 36. Summer reading lists are presented as a way to keep young minds sharp and engaged during the vacation months. The reality is that they are an engine of procrastination and resentment. By turning reading from a pleasure into a mandatory assignment with a looming deadline, these lists often kill the very love for books they claim to foster. The selection of books is frequently a collection of important, but painfully dull classics that have little relevance to a modern teenager's life. The entire exercise culminates in the last week of August with millions of students frantically skim-reading Spark Notes, not to learn, but to pass a quiz on the first day of school. 37. The school talent show is framed as a wonderful showcase of the diverse and unique abilities of the student body. Let's call it what it truly is: a 90-minute cringe fest punctuated by one or two genuinely impressive acts. For every surprisingly talented singer or musician, there are a dozen acts that are a public demonstration of a hobby that should have remained private. The awkward magic tricks, the tone-deaf vocal performances, the poorly choreographed dances, it's all held together by an audience of parents who are legally obligated to applaud. It's not a celebration of talent. It's a celebration of participation and a powerful lesson in secondhand embarrassment. 38. The phrase, "This will be on the test," is the most powerful and destructive lie in all of education. It is presented as a helpful signpost, a guide for students to focus their learning. What it actually does is signal to the entire class that everything else the teacher has said is irrelevant. It's a verbal admission that the goal is not to learn, understand, or think critically. The goal is to memorize a specific set of facts just long enough to regurgitate them for a grade. It transforms education from an exploration into a strategic game of data extraction, rewarding temporary memorization over genuine comprehension. 39. The phrase, "There are no stupid questions," is one of education's most beautiful lies. Teachers love to say it, right before rolling their eyes when someone actually asks one. In real classrooms, curiosity is quietly ranked. Approved questions get smiles, weird ones get sighs. Kids learn fast that it's safer to stay quiet than risk embarrassment. So instead of thinkers, schools breed silence. There are plenty of stupid answers, but pretending all questions are welcome might be the dumbest one of all. 40. The ultimate lie is the school's mission statement, usually emblazoned on a plaque near the main entrance. It's filled with soaring, beautiful words like fostering lifelong learners, creating global citizens, and nurturing individual potential. This statement describes a utopian institution that doesn't actually exist. The real mission, dictated by budget constraints and standardized testing mandates, is far less inspiring. Achieve the highest possible test scores, maintain a satisfactory graduation rate, and avoid lawsuits. That plaque isn't a statement of purpose. It's a piece of aspirational marketing for the parents, a beautiful fiction to hang over the messy, complicated, and underfunded reality of modern schooling. If school was supposed to teach us critical thinking, why did it feed us so much garbage we never questioned? Drop the most ridiculous school lie you still hear people repeat. I'm collecting confessions. Smash that like, subscribe, and let's keep dismantling the world's favorite illusions, one educational truth at a time.